All right. I think we can start. Perhaps you're the only one joining today, so maybe you can give a short introduction and then.
Okay, great. All right. My name is Lars Jansen. I study at the Radboud University in Nijmegen. For my thesis, I am studying the barriers and the drivers for the implementation of circular business models. So Mudgenes is a good example of one of these models. So I was interested in the factors that you encountered during this process. So should we already start the interview, or maybe wait for other students?
It looks like you're the only one joining today, so I think that's good for you. And in that case, we can start.
All right. Let me just first ask a general question then. So looking back at the implementation of your model, what were the main drivers that helped you in this process of implementing it?
Yeah, what were the main drivers in helping us implement it? Usually Bert, our CEO, is here as well, and he's really better with the business questions on this, but he's on holiday right now.
Okay.
This is also Danique.
Hi, I'm
Hi, Danique.
Responsible for marketing and also partly co-owner. So your question was, what were the main drivers to start a business or to start?
The main drivers. So for example, from an environmental standpoint or from a financial standpoint.
Exactly. So Bert, our founder, he has 30 years of experience within the textile industry, living in different countries, where he really saw the bad effects of the fashion industry. For example, he used to live in China, and he saw how exit doors were closed, so no people, could steal anything, but that also meant that they were kept in case of fire. And they just saw how harmful the whole fashion industry is. And after not having worked for a year, he decided that he wanted to do something with a purpose for the world. And because of his experience in fashion and knowing that fashion is one, very harmful, but also a very big industry, he thought, this is where I can make an impact. And then it started off with jeans, and actually we are still mainly focusing on jeans, as jeans are one of the most popular items of fashion, but also, like 2 billion jeans are sold annually, but also one of the most polluting items in fashion. So for us, jeans are really a way to make an impact. And our ambition has never been to become a really big business with really big profits. That's also not happening at the moment. But our aim is really to make a change in this world, show how a circular business can thrive, like how you can really make a circular business model run in a healthy way, as in healthy, making enough money to sustain, but also inspiring others to do a similar, to do things in a similar way.
Okay, that's a very nice vision to have. So you said, like, Bert started in a fast fashion company, and then he decided, like, this is a very polluting business. Let's see if we can make it sustainable and find partners that can create like fashion with with value for the environment and also socially and economically.
Yeah, but that also doesn't mean that we are a non-profit, because in the end you have to make we have to be a healthy business to also keep the business running and to make an impact. And we then always say we make impact in two ways. One, by selling our jeans, meaning no like dirty denim brands will be sold because people purchase ours, but also by sharing the whole circular business approach with the world.
Yeah, I can imagine, because your company is of course a front runner in this, and it's not yet mainstream, that you encounter a lot of barriers in this way. So I wanted to talk more about that in this interview. So to continue with the main question, what were the main barriers for your company in the implementation?
So when we started, I mean, we started with really small investments in just one kind of product. And as we said, we focus on jeans. That still means that you have to offer a variety of jeans because every person has a different body shape. And we started with one jeans for men, one jeans for women. And of course, that wasn't like the perfect fit for everyone. So of course, more investments needed to be made in like expanding product category. So that was really a barrier, but also, of course, getting brand awareness as a starting company is really hard. But then the smart thing was that we really launched that approach of lease a jean. So starting with an entirely different way of approaching fashion. So you can lease our jeans with the idea to move away from ownership towards more access, and sharing economy was really on trend at that moment. So we reached a lot of media, but then, so that was not really the barrier, but the barrier there was more that, you know, getting into the media as one, but then having people to also change their purchase behavior from buying one brand to this better and more sustainable brand, namely Mud Jeans, was really and is still a challenge.
So if I can conclude then, so the consumer acceptance is still like in its infancy. It's like maybe not normal for consumers to think about jeans as a subscription, but they are used to like purchase it beforehand and see how long they can do with it.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you can also purchase our jeans, and also from the start, people could either rent or just buy our jeans. So
you can do both, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But of course, I mean, overall, as a garment brand, getting that first purchase of new people is always a challenge. And that our biggest challenge there was that we have to compete with big brands such as Levi's, yeah, you name it, like all the bigger retailers such as Zara, Calvin Klein, you know, all those brands have jeans and they have much bigger margins. So they have much more marketing power, and we have less margins because of recycling denim. I mean, everyone thinks in the beginning that like, oh, so it's probably cheaper to recycle your fabrics, but no, it's way more expensive. Of course, we pay our factory workers a minimum wage, which is also more expensive than other companies will do. And we use organic cotton, which is more expensive than normal cotton. So all in all, that leaves us with lower margins to use for marketing.
Yeah, I can imagine when you want to close a loop, you have a lot more variable costs for collecting, sorting, and
yeah, I think that's another big barrier also that our CEO often mentions. There's really a huge logistical effort as well involved if you want to collect your jeans back, and also if you want to lease out jeans, because usually you just sell a product and it's gone and it's out of your mind. But if you want to take responsibility for the waste at the end of its life, you need to carry the costs and the logistical effort of getting the jeans back to you. And then you also need to distinguish between what is just a returned jeans from somebody that, you know, bought it and doesn't want it, and what is a returned jeans that needs to be recycled. And then there you also need to distinguish between what gets part of our vintage collection and what actually gets recycled. So really distinguishing then also between these things really took a lot of effort, or it still does. And I think that also was a big, well, I wouldn't say barrier because it did work out, but it was definitely a difficulty of the whole business model.
Okay, that's understandable. So we were talking about like the resource flow of getting these jeans back. I can imagine with the subscription model, it might be easier to get them back, because I read like you provide a contract, and then after a year, they can choose either to send it back or keep it. So that's how you stay in contact with the jeans then.
Yeah, that's one way, or that's also one of the reasons why we did this approach, because this way we can better guarantee that we get the jeans back once they're no longer worn. But on the other hand, it also makes things a bit more difficult because you have monthly payments instead of a one-off payment. So you also have to, you know, make sure, do these things really get paid on a monthly basis? Then you have to check if, you know, the bank accounts work, things like that. It's also a thing that our CEO often mentions is a big logistical headache. It's very good in terms of getting the resources back, and that's one of the main motivations, but it's definitely a harder setup. Yeah.
Is it also in terms of administrative burden, a big burden? Because with a monthly subscription, of course, you have transactions each month, and
yeah,
it might be more work than the linear alternative.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I also made a categorization for the fields that these drivers and obstacles might occur, to give it a little bit more structure. So maybe I can start with financial. So you were already saying in the beginning it was difficult to finance the model. So is it in terms of attracting investors or attracting capital in general? How does that?
Yeah, so that was really a challenge in the beginning, indeed. And also, I mean, at that point, so that was like 2014, sustainability was a topic, but not such a hot topic as it is today. There were not so many banks really believing in, sustainable business also being healthy and profitable. So we were really lucky to find a good contact at Triodos Bank. And so they really supported us with the first investment loan. And from there, we continued the road with impact investors such as Stichting Doen and PDENH. And they are still our impact investors. So in the beginning, it was just Stichting Doen with a loan, like €50,000 loan. It had to be paid back with an interest rate. But that really provided the needed work capital. And at the moment, it's PDENH and Stichting Doen together.
Okay. And these investors are all specialized in like sustainability funds or?
Exactly. Yeah. So they both say they're really impact investors. So they not only look at, of course, we have like quarterly reporting with them. So they look at the numbers, but they also, so they look at the growth numbers or our growth ambition. But they also look at our impact numbers, such as water savings. Well, they I can talk about more. Yeah.
Okay, that's nice that there are investors that are willing to invest in sustainability.
Yeah, it's really important. And also, this is also, have you ever heard of Kate Raworth?
No.
She is an English author of The Donut Economy.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah.
And we saw her at a talk at Change Now, an event that we went to in Paris a few months ago. And she said this thing that there are so many, small companies, and then at one point to scale, they need work capital. And then from the initial investors or impact investors, they move to bigger investors that really don't care at all about, about their impact goals. So then it's just so hard to really become a bigger company, while still sticking to that same ambition. And then it's really important to have more bigger impact investors as well.
Yeah, I also read from other examples that the pilot phase, like the startup, is with the first products, getting the capital is not super hard, but indeed the scaling up is the hardest part.
Is this where are you writing your thesis on this topic, or?
I'm writing my thesis on the topic of the barriers and drivers in general. So I have these categories and then like see the oversight of it, and then write conclusions or recommendations for example, government or other businesses that want to adopt, so they can see like, oh, there are these barriers and there are these things we can do to help foster this. So still with the financial, are there also any drivers like market opportunity or growth opportunity, stuff like that? Like you saw like a market for sustainability that was not fulfilled yet?
Yeah, definitely. And there have also been like subsidies. So for example, we got a subsidy from RVO to really start with a hub of other sustainable companies to communicate in the German market. So we really got like a subsidy for it to really start expanding to the German market, and that was paid for. And there have been more like subsidies that we received. So did you say like the opportunities, right?
Yeah, I think you answered the question quite all right. The next category is organizational. So were there any obstacles in the organization during this implementation? So think about skills, expertise, time.
Well, no, I think that's really an advantage of being a purposeful company. We're also a B Corp since 2015, and that also means that we really attract young talents such as Leah. It's also what Bert always says, but now I'm feeling super old, but I'm a little bit older. Anyhow, so it really attracts talents that are just eager and motivated to work for a purposeful company.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And that also means that we have a very international team here at our Mudgeons office in the Netherlands. And yeah, that is really, definitely a really good way of setting like an international brand compared to other like super Dutch brands that also want to expand globally.
Yeah, I read in your sustainability report that you have a very inclusive team with a lot of nationalities and cultures. That's nice. Like, are there any more drivers in this area, like, for example, training programs for the employees or research and development?
Well, maybe you can talk about research and development.
Yeah, so, well, there's a lot of subsidy opportunities in this field as well. And there's one thing that we did, I'm not sure if you saw, but the Road to 100 project. So there we also had a really great student at the time join us, and she was studying at Saxion University, and she really helped us make this goal of a 100% recycled jeans more concrete, because she then as part of her thesis did some research on this, which is really good. So if you're really deep into this topic of circular fashion and also approaching this from a more scientific perspective, you really also attract students and universities in general. So we work now quite closely with Saxion University on this project. And yeah, there's always more research opportunities going around and investigating durability, and
That's nice. So that is that on the chemical recycling side then?
Yeah, so what we do right now is mechanical recycling, and then for the 100% recycled jeans, that's a combination of mechanical and chemical recycling. And because that has never been done like that before, this needed really a lot of research. We started in late 2019 with this, and then together with Saxion University, we figured out what type of spinning can you do, how do you combine these two recycling processes. At the start, it wasn't even clear that we would combine these two. And then also there's different ways of chemically recycling. There's not so sustainable ways and there's more sustainable ways. And obviously we wanted to stick to the more sustainable ways. So yeah, there was a lot of research there to be done.
Yeah, there's still a lot of development in the chemical recycling.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Is also like the structure in the organization is like really decentralized, or?
In terms of what do you mean?
Like the structure, do you all have like management layers that are very direct? So you as a new employee, you can directly approach the CEO or
so it's not really the classical hierarchical system that since we're quite a small team with 15 now, and we're all in the same office. I can speak to the CEO, I can speak to every other team member, and it's really a very flat hierarchy system.
Like a culture of open collaboration, though.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. In terms of product related and technological barriers, did you face any? Like, are there sufficient technologies for what you want to achieve, or?
Well, I would say there still needs to happen a lot. So in terms of mechanical recycling, I think there were some physical challenges there in terms of, for example, yeah, if you use recycled or mechanically recycled fibers, that automatically means you have certain restrictions. So the reason why we can't do 100% mechanically recycled jeans is because they wouldn't be durable enough. Every time you recycle the fiber, it gets shorter than the original fiber was. And this means that the fabric gets less strong if you have too much mechanically recycled fiber in there. But while it is nice to have a lot of recycled fibers in your jeans, it also doesn't make much sense if you then can only wear the jeans for a short amount of time. So there we figured out that the maximum we can do without compromising durability is 40% mechanically recycled. But that doesn't mean that this always has to be like that, right? I mean, perhaps more research can really make improvements there. Maybe it would be possible to increase the amount of mechanically recycled fibers in the future, but also in terms of chemically recycled fibers, there's lots of new businesses now, and the supply still needs to scale up a little bit. And also doing this now in bulk and really scaling this up has not been done the way we plan to do it. So there still really needs to happen a lot of research.
Okay, that's very interesting. So now you still have to mix it with like virgin certified cotton.
Yes, so for the jeans that we sell at the moment, we can go up to 40% post-consumer recycled, and then the rest is certified organic cotton. But then for the other ones, it's just recycled for the Road to 100 jeans. And we hope to sell those in a year from now.
All right, that's a clear answer. Are there also like drivers within this category? So let's say I read something about track and trace technologies.
Yeah.
Have you implemented those?
So there's a few new developments there where, for example, you can, there's different approaches, but you can, for example, trace the fiber, right? And then see whether there's recycled fiber in there and things like that. I think for us, we have been in contact with people there and we've spoken about these things. But since we have such a small supply chain, and we really have direct contact to every one of our supply chain partners, at the moment, this is not as urgent of a project for us, because if you look at really big brands with a huge supply chain, they don't have an overview of what happens, and they need to really do this to verify the claims of their supply chain partners as well. For us, this isn't as big of a problem, or I wouldn't say it's a problem at all, which is really a good thing for us. But in general, it's a really interesting technology, and I would also hope to see that improves even more, because so far with these fibers that are introduced into the textile, it's really just you scan it and you see whether that fiber is in there, but there is no different material for each claim, for example, and you can't really, it's just a yes or no whether this fiber is present, and it doesn't give you as much insight yet as I think would be ideal. But yeah, we are working together with a company, and that will soon launch, to have a really transparent supply chain. So you have a QR code on the product, you can see exactly the supply chain of that product and the environmental impact of that product. And that's also a really great way to give the customer even more insight.
So that's for the the consumer side, so they can scan the code and then they see, okay, there's this material in it.
Yeah, and they can see exactly the steps that it went through.
So maybe also a nice bridge from here is to the label scheme for consumers, because for a lot of consumers it is hard to determine if like a textile is circular or not, because there is this pile of different labels and stuff like that. So is that something you as a company also encounter, that you miss this, or is there right now like a certification for circular labels?
No, that's really still missing, but there is more things happening on that front at the moment, and we're really hoping for stricter regulation there. So at the moment, there isn't really, the term sustainable, for example, isn't protected. Anyone can use that word, and we see now, I'm not sure if you came across that as well, but there's big brands being sued for making these claims in the wrong way and misleading the customer.
Yeah.
So we see that there's more accountability of brands who make sustainability claims. And for us, that's really good because so far, I mean, as Danica explained, we don't have the budget to really do this on a big marketing scale as other brands do, but we really put in the work when it comes to sustainability. So far it's been really hard to differentiate between the ones that, put in the work and the ones that have a bigger marketing budget. But with new regulations coming up, we really hope that will change.
Yeah, that's a nice insight for the future. In terms of the supply chain, you were talking about you have like close contact with your suppliers and your partners. Yeah, what would you say in the supply chain really helps each other in rolling out this business?
What do you mean?
So like, are there any successful ingredients in the cooperation together? Like how do you cooperate with each other to make this make this work?
Well, I think firstly, just having a close contact to your supply chain partners means you understand your product way better, and you can make improvements a lot faster, and you really understand what's going into your product and where you can, make it even more sustainable. But I think also this shared trust really, helps you work a business in a successful way. And we really also work with partners that are pioneers in the sustainability field as well. So Ustix International, our tier 1 supplier, so the one that makes the jeans out of the fabric. They really do a lot of great projects. They recycle all of the water that they use. And we have direct contact to our supply chain partners also for our own impact measurements. So we have our LCA. I'm not sure if you saw that, but this is basically showing us exactly where the impact of each product is coming from. And this wouldn't be possible without a close contact to our supply chain partners. So we really get firsthand data from them on what goes into our products.
Yeah, so you're very transparent to each other, and there are not like big confidential secrets that you do not want to share with each other because of maybe conflicts in goals.
Yeah, exactly.
So you were very conscious about selecting your partners in that sense, like criteria for sustainability.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we only have a handful of supply chain partners, so we only have one garment supplier. So our tier 1 supplier is just one company, and then we have one main fabric supplier. We have one main recycling partner. So it's really a small supply chain.
Yeah. So, and in terms of feedstock, is it hard to get the raw material, like the raw sustainable material, because maybe there are just a few providers for this? Like, is it hard to get enough at the right time?
Yeah, I think especially now, when you see climate change catastrophes, and they also really impact crops, right? That's really becoming a problem also with organic cotton, which that's the main thing. But I think an advantage with that is that we do use recycled materials as well. And if we look to increase that more and more, especially with 100% recycled jeans, that's really where this circular approach is coming in very helpful, because if we only use the recycled materials, then we're not so dependent on these raw materials anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So in terms of selecting partners, do you prefer local, or does it not matter how long the international chain is?
No, that does definitely matter. Unfortunately, it wouldn't be possible to have our whole supply chain in the Netherlands. That's just not, it's not developed enough to be doing this here. But we have consciously selected supply chain partners that are not based in, China or further away, for that reason, that we want short transport distances, and we don't do any air transport. We only do trucks and then ships. So, so for example, our recycler, our fabric producers are based in Spain, and our garment supplier, so our tier 1 supplier is based in Tunisia, which is a truck ride down to France, and then it's a short ship ride to there, and it's really on north of Africa. So we really did that consciously to have also a short supply chain, and
like minimize your footprint on the transportation side with these choices.
Exactly.
Like in terms of the demand, do you see like a change in custom preferences? Like, for example, when you started, did the demand for your products grow over time?
I think that now more and more customers are paying attention to sustainability in their purchasing. I think that we were lucky with the fact that we had this Lisa Jeans system, because it really attracted this niche audience, you know, these really sustainably minded people. And at the time there just wasn't much else, many other options. So I think we were good at attracting that niche audience, and we do see growing interest in our business model. And also from other brands, we see more interest, and we see that they take over some of our approaches, which is in the end what we want. We want to inspire others also to take this over. So yeah, there's definitely growing interest.
Yeah, I can imagine the customers are also more loyal because of like the values you express.
Yeah.
Like, for example, if you start this leasing model, you already have in your mind like I want to contribute maybe to this more sustainable way. So then they are more loyal to the model maybe. In terms of institutional and regulatory, so we already talked a little bit about laws and government, but to make it more specific, are there any policies or laws that hindered your organization during this implementation?
Let me think about that. So, well, there's one thing that our CEO often mentions, which isn't really a hinder in that sense, but what's interesting is that we essentially pay a double tax on our product. So once we make the original product, and then we obviously recycle that into new jeans, and it would make sense to then not pay tax on that part of the product that's recycled, right? And this would also encourage more people to recycle. Essentially, it is a financial barrier to recycling if you say pay tax on it again.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and now, yeah, a problem was also that there just was a lack of regulation when it came to greenwashing and things like that, because we really, like I said, we couldn't distance ourselves from other brands sufficiently in that sense. But that's hopefully changing.
So there's not yet like a sustainable policy in place, for example, to use recycled content as a mandate for the future, for example. I don't know if it's already in place.
It's less that it's mandatory to have certain materials. It's more that there weren't any clear regulations on the type of claims that you could make. So yeah, a brand can market something as sustainable, even though it might not really be sustainable. But now with more regulations happening there, you can then see that those brands that truly are doing the sustainable work can still make these claims and others cannot. Yeah. So
they're making progress in that, but at the moment it's still like a little bit of an unlevel playing field in that sense for you versus the linear way. I also read something about extended producer responsibility. So basically that the company is accountable for what they make. Did they already implement that with the textiles or?
No, but that's hopefully also coming soon, which is also, you know, for us a really important aspect, because we always say, you know, we've been doing this for a long time, and we hope that it becomes more regulated. That, you know, at the moment we also take jeans from other brands. Actually, quite a lot of jeans that we get back are from other brands, and that just goes to show that people don't know what to do with these products. And they then very often end up in landfill. And yeah, it's not as if it's possible for us to take all of them back. So we really hope that that becomes more regulated as well.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be a really great support for you, if like the sorting and the collecting is kind of arranged via the municipality, or what it's called in English. You also said something about subsidies and funds. Like, is it from like just sustainable investors, or is it also from the government side?
No, it's also from the government side. So we also recently got a subsidy from the government to begin a repair pilot project. So at the moment we offer free repairs within the first year of lease, but we want to see how we can maybe extend that. And for that, we also got a subsidy now to do a pilot project on that. And we also, I believe, received a public subsidy for the Road to 100 project.
Okay, that's nice. And also in terms of public procurement, I don't know if that says anything to you, but like if the government wants to buy fashion workwear for their employees, do they implement like these criteria, like my jeans is more sustainable than this other brand, we give them the order?
That I'm not sure whether, so far we haven't had procurement in that sense. So I'm not sure, yeah, but it would be nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we covered most of my questions.
Great.
I read also something about you also invest like in your partners, like the Ustex International Factory. I think you help them with renewable energy or something like that.
Yeah, so we're trying to support them in that because they want to move to renewable energy at their factory. But in Tunisia, it's a little bit more complicated because the government regulations mean that there are really, really long waiting times to hear back about this, and it's really complicated to get the, how do you call that? To get the rights to start building solar panels and so on your property. So unfortunately, we're still waiting for more progress on that.
But the intention of this is that like you co-create with your partners to help each other out and make the supply chain more circular and viable, right?
Exactly.
So not just out of your own interest, but yeah, like to push the movement further. Yeah, that's nice to hear. I think that's it. I really want to thank you for your time.
Yeah, you're very welcome.